About it is there's definitely mechanistic reasons for why red meat or processed meat may cause cancer, because many processed meats have nitrites, which are preservative used to cure and flavor meats. And once nitrites get into your stomach, the acidity in your stomach turns them into nitrosamines, specifically N-nitrosodimethylamines or NDMA, which is a known carcinogen, and it could increase the risk of cancer, specifically stomach cancer. On top of that, how we cook meats also matters, because when meat is grilled or fried or barbecued at high temperatures, this process can create chemicals called heterocyclic amines or HCAs or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons or PAHs. And both of these compounds have been shown to damage DNA and promote cancer cells in animal studies. So how do we put it all together? Well, the studies causes cancer, and the strong scientific evidence that alcohol causes cancer, and the International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified alcohol as a group 1 carcinogen all the way back in 1987 due to sufficient evidence that it causes cancer of the oral cavity and the pharynx and the esophagus and your liver. And there's also association with breast cancer in women and colorectal cancer. And alcohol can lead to cancer in several ways. First, it's metabolized in your liver to acetaldehyde, which is a toxic compound that directly damages DNA. And then it interferes with DNA repair. And then alcohol also causes vitamin deficiencies. So you get lower levels of vitamin B1 or thiamine, which is absolutely critical for healthy mitochondrial function and energy metabolism. And alcohol can also impair your body's ability to absorb folate, and a folate deficiency can lead to further DNA synthesis errors. And on top of all that, alcohol also acts as a solvent, which actually enhances the absorption of other carcinogens like tobacco or NDMA into your tissues. Alright, so this is not a comprehensive list of all the. And then finally, cancers need a blood supply, which they get through a process called angiogenesis. And that is what provides these cancer cells new blood vessels, almost like a lifeline, to feed it nutrients needed for growth. And unfortunately, many foods in our modern diet directly support every one of those steps. But the good news is we can use this to lead to uncontrolled growth of cells. But for that mutated cell to survive and spread, it needs several things to fall into place. So first, cancer cells need glucose as a primary energy source. And then it needs hormones to grow. So it'll be things like insulin and IGF-1, which are basically signals that activate growth pathways. And then cancer cells require inflammation, which is what breaks down barriers. And that inflammation is what suppresses our immune system. And our immune system is our first line of defense against cancers. And then finally, cancers need a blood supply, which they get through a process called angiogenesis. And that is what provides these cancer cells new blood vessels, almost like a lifeline. Are peanuts and tree nuts like almonds or walnuts or pistachios. Now I want to be clear, we do not want to avoid the price here, but foods that are high in sugar or processed carbohydrates are also linked to increased cancer risk, especially when it comes to breast cancer and colon cancer and possibly pancreatic cancer. And that is because cancer cells love sugar. So to help you visualize this, imagine your body is made out of trillions of tiny engines, a body of food that is preferred by cancer cells. And then the sugar you're eating is increasing the signals in your body that tells cancer cells to grow and divide faster. And we especially see this in breast cancer, where some studies show that cancerous cells can have 6 times more insulin receptors than healthy cells. And if that wasn't bad enough, that excess sugar leads to chronic inflammation, which can further lead to even more DNA damage, which then in turn makes it even easier for cancers to appear. And then this inflammation also weakens your immune system, which we often think about in terms of fighting infections, but our immune system is actually our first line of defense against cancers. So bottom line is, cancer cells are very sugar hungry, which we can actually use to our advantage. We can choose the foods that will stop